It's the ERP Confab. I'm David Essex, Industry Editor at TechTarget's ERP website. Rimini Street is a third-party provider of software support and managed services for SAP and Oracle systems, Salesforce, and major database platforms. It claims to provide better tech support than the vendors at a fraction of the cost and help customers avoid forced upgrades. It recently added support for SAP S/4HANA Cloud. To learn more about what Rimini Street does and how it does it, I talked to Eric Helmer, the company's Senior Vice President and Chief Technology Officer. We also discussed SAP's controversial announcement that future innovations will only be available on SAP Cloud products and not on-premises ECC and S/4HANA. Eric, first of all, can you explain what Rimini Street does?
We started out the company in 2005. We started out to really solve a major problem that companies have, and that is enterprise software companies like ERP and database companies like Oracle and SAP and IBM and Microsoft and the rest of that. Their model is to charge their customers a lot of money every year for annual maintenance and support. And companies aren't really just getting a lot of value out of that relationship. It's hard to get tickets closed, on time, issues resolved. It takes a long time. You're in constant state of escalation, or you're doing a lot of self-support. They send you a bunch of documentation and all that. So people are, in today's time when people are trying to tighten their belts a little bit and get the most out of their vendor relationships, that's one that's being questioned. And we solve that problem. So our customers no longer renew their annual support and maintenance contracts with companies like Oracle and SAP. And we provide a much better level of support and service, including things like tax and legal and regulatory updates and support for customizations and how-to questions and performance questions. And our average response time for a high severity ticket is 90 seconds. When we have somebody logging into your system, helping you, figuring it out, and solving real issues. So it's a much better support model, right? And it's typically 50 to 90% of a less payment and less cost than you would pay the vendors. And of course, over the years, we've grown into managed services and professional services. We have a slew of security products and interoperability products. And we've gotten into cloud support like Salesforce and Ariba and SuccessFactors. So we've really grown the company. It's been quite a ride.
So how does Rimini Street develop sufficient expertise in the SAP systems to provide the managed services and the support for those systems?
We are really good at recruiting and retaining talent. That's the lifeline of everything that we do. We have programs and people and teams that are dedicated to doing just that. We call it recruiting to retention continuum. And and we take recruiting and retention very seriously. So on the recruiting side, we have a global network of recruiters. We hire the top 5% in every one of the 17 countries where we have full-time engineers. We're focused on interview skills for hiring managers and constantly training hiring managers on those interview skills. And it's a committee. It's not just one person. So we call it swarming, but it's really hiring panels of sorts. On the retention side, we try to offer really, really compelling, unique benefits. Not only are we probably the premier from work from home. We've been doing work from home way before the pandemic. So that's part of our DNA from the beginning. But we also have what we call Fabulous Fridays. But that means that every person at Rimini Street is required to work 4 working days out of 5. And we feel that is a great retention program as well, along with training and a really world-class rewards and recognition program, which we think is really unique to the culture.
So last month, Rimini Street put out a press release and an announcement saying that it was expanding Rimini Manage to SAP Cloud software. And you claimed in the announcement that it can enable organizations to, quote, achieve the same improved productivity, predictability, and business value that Rimini Street delivers to clients utilizing perpetually licensed SAP products. So when I read that, I was curious to know how much of that claim is more about the on-premises SAP apps running in, say, private cloud versus what I think of as the more pure cloud, which is the true multi-tenant SaaS the S/4HANA cloud, the public cloud version. And one reason I ask that is that Rimini Street seems to be mostly about helping customers get value from existing systems and not have to take the upgrades that are forced on it by the vendor. Many SAP ERP cloud migrations, based on what I've observed and been able to report, and my colleagues, it really just the lift and shift type where you're taking on-premises ERP and putting it, let's say, on a third-party provider's cloud. So is Rimini Street really saying it can provide the same benefits on the multi-tenant SaaS S/4HANA cloud as it does with on-premises S/4HANA?
It's a little different, and I understand the confusion. So if you look at the ITIL scale, right, of level 4 being kind of the vendor replacement support, level 3, level 2 being kind of that managed service. So we kind of have those two different buckets, right? So we provide vendor replacement support, L4 support, on any perpetual license-based model. So that could be on-premise, or it could be in a bring your own license model for an infrastructure as a service-based cloud, Amazon, Azure, Google, whatever. So that's where that's going to come in. And of course, yeah, Rimini Street customers, they're not forced to upgrade or move or migrate or lift and shift or re-implement to the software as a service model or take up a program such as RISE. And they certainly don't need to do it by a particular forced date, which is the reason why I think people come to Rimini Street and they go if and when or ever, if they ever want to. Because I think most of the time we see, established on-premise customers are having a real hard time justifying the expensive re-implementation to a software as a service, right? Because they're giving up that perpetual ownership of license that they invested in 10 years ago. They were expecting to run for 50 years, right? And now these vendors are saying, well, now you've got to throw all that away and re-implement to a subscription-based rented tenant model of SaaS, right? And that's just a tough one to do, to spend multi-million dollars, multi-year projects to only get the similar or even less functionality, which they started with two years prior to that, right? Now, but for those customers that are already on SaaS, maybe they started their journey there, or for some reason they may find a justifiable business case to actually migrate to those SaaS models. We're here; it doesn't really matter to us, and we help in that point, in that kind of level 3, level 2 area of the day-to-day managed services perspective, and we provide professional services as well, so we can help them with any kind of migration or additional functionality or that. So it doesn't matter where people go. We have services in each one. It's just a little bit different in where we are on the support ITIL spectrum.
I'm curious to know what Rimini Street had to do to make that expansion to SAP cloud products possible. For example, were there technical hurdles that are unique to cloud deployment? For example, like new integrations that you had to create, or maybe cloud to cloud or cloud to on-premises integrations?
The architecture between on-premise and cloud is quite different. Definitely the case, because the level of access you have to the back end versus the front end, right? It's a little bit different. But the one thing that really remains constant is that these vendors are not investing in support. It's not getting any better. And what we hear from these clients again and again is that they need better support for these mission critical systems. And we've had a lot of success with supporting SaaS cloud products like Ariba and SuccessFactors and Salesforce, and because we're bringing in our already tested and established first class approach, providing timely updates, doing proactive and reactive based supports, because we bring in those readily available support engineers. And I think a lot of the cloud providers, if you really look at it, they're relying on what we call community-based assistance, right? Where they're offering forums and blogs and chat rooms and stuff, so that their customers are doing all the support for them, right? And it's kind of word of mouth, and this is just really unacceptable at the enterprise level. Now the hyperscalers are a big part of the solution, because I think when you look at people who really want to go to the cloud, they don't want to re-implement everything. They don't want to move from a perpetual license to a rented model, but they want to get out of their 40-year-old dying data center, right? That's just really old. It's really expensive to maintain. They don't want to be in that business anymore. So hyperscalers just come in as a perfect solution when people just want to get out of that data center, but they love the software and the version that they have today. So they just want to put that on somebody else's hardware, and they want to retain the ownership in what counts, right? You want to retain the ownership in the software. You don't really care about owning the hardware because that's a temporary asset where software is forever, right? Where they come to us is they kind of looking for advice on, hey, which cloud should I go to depending on the workload profile that I have? What products in the cloud should I go with to allow the right flexibility and from the licensing model? Security is always an issue problem with those. We want to make sure that we understand what the hyperscalers are doing from a security perspective and what's the role and responsibility of the customer in the world of security. And we also make sure that our customers aren't too susceptible to a lock-in model if that's not really what they're going for. And the reason why I think it's great for us and our customers is because a lot of those the hyperscalers and the big SIs and all that stuff, they're all kind of on this journey together where we are really truly agnostic because we have solutions and products no matter what end state people go to. So we can provide clients with truly genuine guidance on their cloud journey. I think that's what they'd like us to do.
To provide that kind of support and advice about hyperscalers like AWS and Microsoft Azure, what do you do? Do you have relationships with those hyperscalers such that they give you maybe a little extra background information and documentation to help with supporting your customers in using those services? Or is it more kind of hands-off where you do your own research and those services enough to provide the advice, but you don't exactly have a relationship, let's say, with an AWS?
That's a great question because we purposefully have a policy to not have kickback relationships from anyone, because that's when people start becoming less agnostic and they start trying to move customers into a way that's best for them. We move customers and advise customers on what's best for the customers, and we have no other skin in the game than that.
One of the real hurdles that I've noticed and has been written about by a lot of folks in connection with it, let's stick with SAP, going from like ECC on premises to the multi-tenant SaaS S/4HANA cloud is that not all the same functionality is there in that particular version of S/4HANA, especially if they're not coming from S/4HANA on premises and coming from ECC. It seems like there's inherently going to be like a business process re-engineering process, as we used to call it, which I think is a big part of what RISE with SAP is. It's helping companies figure out how they have to do things differently if they really want to go to multi-tenant SaaS version of the cloud in their ERP. Does Rimini Street offer the kind of business process advice that SAP itself and the big system integrators, like you mentioned earlier, that SAP does with its partners so that customers can figure out how to transform their business to make that transition?
It's just not surprising that we would get some kind of announcement or news that is going to imply that all the fun stuff is in the new place and we're not doing anything in the old place. It's just another tactic to force people to abandon ownership and repurchase and replatform into a locked-in model, right? So it's the long game. But when these vendors make decisions that aren't really in favor of their customers, that's when that creates a tremendous opportunity for Rimini Street, because we provide choices and the ability to follow their own business-driven roadmap to do what they want with the software that they're entitled to, and not the roadmap forced by the vendors. So of course we have many proprietary tools and calculators that help people look at the different types of options that they have. While there's a lot of options and it's a little complicated, it's not infinite. It's finite. And we can look at every single fork in the road of where to go and model it out. Because when you have a program like RISE, it forces customers to have to do a feature by feature by feature comparison of how they're using the system today and map that over to what it's going to look like in RISE, because they're going to have some things will be the same, some things will be different, some things won't even be available at all in RISE. And they're doing a very mission critical thing in ECC today that isn't even available. And those companies that just blindly take the jump in to these cloud models without doing that are getting burnt without being able to do that. And that takes quite some time. It can take months and months to talk to all the subject matter experts to make sure that you look at every feature and functionality and see how and if it's going to match, and then do the cost analysis of that. But more importantly, what we help our customers do is look at the ROI. So if you were to spend 1 or 2 years moving over to a cloud model, and you make that investment, how much is that about going to be? And in what year are you going to realize the payback from that investment? And what is going to be the percentage payback of that going to be, say, modeled out over 5 to 7 years? And we'll look at that through, okay, should I go to an infrastructure as a service model? Should I go to a software as a service model? Should I stay with what I have and kind of go run the car for as long as I can? All these different kind of models that we have, and we put real numbers to it, real industry numbers with our customers' data, so that they can literally find out the best way from a financial perspective what's going to make sense, because board of directors are requiring this level of analysis these days. They want to see, going into a board and saying, I need $10 million to go from version X to version Y. That's just not cutting it anymore. They've got to see how that's going to really, truly impact the financials of the business and move the bottom line. And that's what people need to model out. And that's a little bit strange for a lot of IT managers to have to do that level of detail, but it's required today.
Some customers might have questions about security patching and whether you can do that or not if you hire Rimini Street.
There are so many different security companies and ways to handle enterprise software security. There's so many more options that we've ever had. We have our approach. Other people have other approach. We have some great security products that we use that we think are great, but it's just different ways, right? It's different strokes for different folks, but they're all probably viable. But we have our ways, and other people have their ways, and that's just the way it works, right?
Can you say a little more about what your ways are, though? Like some of your security related processes or products are?
We leave security to security companies because we think that's just a good way to do it. So we have some value added reselling of things and a suite of products that we call Rimini Protect. That is focused on protecting the web layer, the middleware layer, and the data. Are really the three main components of any really ERP. And that's just the way it is. So it's 0-day protection. It's in memory. That doesn't have to do a lot of testing and retesting and no downtime and things like that. So I think customers like that approach to security.
So how would you describe Rimini Street's relationship with SAP? I think earlier you said you tend to not have really close relationships with a lot of these vendors because it allows you to be agnostic or more vendor neutral. Is there any kind of relationship, or is it more that Rimini Street just gets a lot of experience using the SAP platforms and understand the documentation and has your own training process, et cetera, that has really nothing to do with SAP as a company?
Right. Yeah. So, both some of the arguably the most robust feature-rich software ever made on the planet. Right. And we love their software. We're passionate about their software, but we don't have any really formal relationship with SAP, like a reseller agreement, or we reselling licenses or anything like that. We're not really doing any of that. We're just trying to help people get the best value out of that SAP platform. So where we fit in is, helping our customers get the most out of their SAP and all enterprise ecosystem by freeing up the budget and the time constraints for organizations, so they can innovate within SAP and around SAP. So I think that we are uniquely positioned to help clients get the most out of their SAP investment, because we bring experts into every single call. So for our clients, the first thing that we have is, in every single call with a customer, we have a 10+ year experienced engineer on the line, which you're not going to find in these vendor support organizations. And we have discussions and how-tos and what ifs and what if we did this and what if we did that. That's just noise, I think, for a lot of the vendors. So what you get is really the software enthusiasts who love the product and can recommend ways to use the existing system in its fullest to achieve the business outcomes that they need. So what that does is that gives people the realization that they can use these platforms for years and years and years beyond what they may originally thought or what the vendors are telling them when they have to retire and replatform to something else. When they looked at the system that they have and they realized, shoot, I'm only using 40 or 50% of the functionality I'm entitled to. I have years of headway here that I can actually use to continuously innovate with the system that I have or potentially around the system, right? Mm-hmm. So it's, to me, I think our customers are more uniquely positioned to get the maximum value out of these systems.
You talked earlier about this sort of forced upgrade, this pressure to upgrade. And SAP really received some sharp criticism, especially from the German and the UK and Ireland user groups quite recently, for saying during its latest quarterly earnings call that future innovation will only be available on S/4HANA Cloud, not the on-premises version of S/4HANA. And customers who bought the on-premises S/4HANA, I think, might feel pretty abandoned. Some of the comments indicate that they do feel that way, and that they might feel misled and maybe, kind of betrayed by SAP. So I'm wondering, first, what was your reaction when you heard about that SAP statement?
I think I was just as mad and frustrated on behalf of the entire user community. I mean, people entered into an agreement with these vendors 10 years ago that says, I'm going to buy this software and I'm going to have a perpetual license and you're going to be with me every step of the way forever and ever and ever. That's because it was really expensive. But why we did it is because we knew that was going to have a return on investment year over year over year, because we're going to be running our business on this platform. So it was worth that huge upfront spend and the annual maintenance that's needed to do that, because we knew that was going to stand the test of time. And now to have that completely reversed and changed and said, no, you've got to rebuy what you already have. To me, my reaction was, it was just completely furious. But again, like I said, when these vendors make these choices that aren't in our customers' interest, this is what really gives the opportunity to Rimini Street to help people get the most out of what they have today and help them make decisions on what incremental costs are going to move the needle for them and what maybe is wasteful.
Can you drill down a little bit into what you're going to do? Like, what are some of the ways that Rimini Street can try to lessen that blow for your SAP customers?
To me, it's do what we've always done, and that is provide a much better world-class support service on the versions customers are currently running, and the current versions that customers want to run in the license model that they prefer. And at the same time, freeing up that budget for innovation projects that actually move the needle for the business. I mean, let's face it, ERP is mission critical. It's mandatory. We must have it. It's always got to be up. It can't be down. But it's not innovative and it's not differentiating, right? You're processing payroll. So people want to be able to, especially in the very competitive landscape that we have today, they need every dollar they can possibly get so that they can focus on systems of innovation and systems of differentiation, not these kind of transactional based systems So when you can free up that budget on projects that can help them invest in innovative solutions, it's just a win-win for everybody. And now, when you talk about our Rimini One program, right, which is really the combination of our L4 support along with the managed services, that really puts a lot of the pressure off of the customers, and they can just hand it over to us and not have to worry about it, completely get it off their plate as a one-stop shop for all of their enterprise software needs, so that they can start retooling and refocusing on things that's going to make a difference.
Does this move by SAP make it harder for you to help your customers keep their SAP systems current with the latest technology?
I don't think so. At least for right now, I don't think so. Because, if you look at what's available in these SaaS cloud, there's really not a whole bunch there that can justify a multi-year, multi-million-dollar, completely expensive and disruptive project. I don't really see anything that is just so alluring that anybody can justify making that move. And even like before, it's just sometimes even critical functionality is missing in that cloud. So historically, it's been our experience that it goes for most of these upgrades. We really don't see a lot of new features in just the upgrades or the migrations to cloud in general, because if there is desired functionality in the new versions, customers can typically get that same or similar functionality either through some sort of customization or innovating around the edge or a bolt on or something like that in a significantly more cost effective way than ripping everything else, throwing it in the trash and starting all over, right? So if there's a delta functionality that somebody wants, our recommendation is put your time and money and effort into that delta functionality. Don't rip out 55 other different things so that you get that one delta functionality, right? And there's so many products and great solutions out there that I bet you we could finally get that functionality in another way that's going to be a fraction of the cost.
So does Rimini Street help the customers do that? Do you help them at least come up with a plan for maybe development or how to go to a third-party provider or buy an additional product that maybe connects in with the SAP system?
Yep, we do. We call it our road mapping services. So we've developed 40 to 50 different templates that we have that are unique to each. The templates are by module, right? So we have a template for HR, template for logistics, template for supply chain, template for finance, and so on and so on. And where we go is do a maturity modeling assessment so that we can kind of see where people are. It's most likely a traffic lighting system of sort. So you can see, hey, you're red here, you're yellow here, you're green here. So you can kind of see where you're skating to, and we can kind of figure out where we need to improve the process, where we need to, whether it's desired or it's just a maturity curve that we want to get to that next level. Once you have that, you in essence have a requirements document, don't you? Right. So here's all the requirements of what future state should look like. Once you have that, you can assign a weight to each one of those requirements, right? And so requirement number 1 has a weight of 10, which means it's mandatory, mission critical. I'm not going to think about anything else. Maybe it has a weight of 1 because it would just be nice to have, and anywhere in between. Right. So now you have a weighting system and requirements document, and now you can go look at all the different available solutions and options you have to get to that end state in an agnostic way, with your focus on getting there in the fastest way possible, in the path of least resistance, in the most cost effective way that's going to return the best return on investment, right? But it has to be done scientifically. And to be honest, this can be a little bit of an emotional conversation too, because people have been doing this for quite a long time, and that takes that emotion out of it and makes it much more scientific. So we help customers through that for sure.
I guess this is a good place to end it. And I thank you for your time for coming in today, Eric.
Sure. Always happy to chat.